I'm Greg Fossilman Raymer. In poker, theory will only take you so far. This is especially true when you're talking about playing the final table of a multi-table tournament, which is something that even the best pros only reach a few times a year if they're lucky. So if reading about final table strategy isn't enough, what's the best way to learn how to handle the pressure of a final table? Our recommendation? One table sit and goes. While there are many different types of sit and go tournaments you can play, either live or online, a one-table sit and go is the only tournament that accurately simulates the pressure of a final table. Why is this? Because in a typical one-table sit and go, only the top 3 players get paid, which makes the structure very similar to that of a multi-table tournament final table, where the top 3 finishers take home the bulk of the money. With that in mind, let's look at the best way to play a one-table sit and go. Like the early stages of an MTT final table, there's really no reason to gamble in the early levels of a sit and go. The blinds are low and the pots are generally not going to be big enough to justify committing a lot of chips before the flop with anything less than a premium hand. This means tight is right in the early levels. Once the field begins to thin and you're down to 5 or 6 players, you should begin to loosen up your game and be willing to gamble a little bit more than you were early on. Keep the gap concept in mind at this stage, meaning that you can open the pot more frequently and with more mediocre hands than you can call with. Since the blinds are generally higher at this stage, you should be careful of calling with marginal or speculative hands. Instead, look for spots where you can re-raise or re-shove all in over your opponents, especially if you can do it with enough chips to have fold equity and you suspect that your opponent isn't particularly strong. When you're down to the money bubble with just 4 players left, you want to play from a position of strength whenever possible. This means you should be playing aggressive poker, especially against shorter stacks and when you're in position. Remember, no one wants to be the bubble boy, which means that most of your opponents are going to be tightening up at this point in order to try and hang on and reach the cash. If you're the only short stack when you're down to 4 players remaining, recognize that you're probably going to get called whenever you move all in. So look for a hand with some showdown value and preferably make sure you get your chips in the pot first. Calling off your stack when you have no fold equity is okay, since you're going to have to win at showdown anyways in order to survive, and often your opponents will be raising you with fairly weak hands of their own. When you're one of 2 short stacks remaining, the big stacks will be raising almost every hand. Obviously, your goal is to outlast the other short stack, and you shouldn't be afraid to fold a big hand in order to do so. Saying that, still, try to avoid becoming involved in obvious race situations, such as when you have a small pair and the big stack raises, hoping instead that the other short stack will bust out first. Once you're in the money, or in the top 3 of a multi-table tournament final table, the worst thing you can do is to play too tight. At this point, the blinds will be very high and your stack will disappear quickly if you fold too many hands. Instead, look to open a lot of pots and be willing to re-raise whenever you have some fold equity. If you don't have fold equity, you're going to want to call or re-raise only when you are quite confident that you have the best hand, or, unfortunately, when you already have a significant portion of your stack invested in the blind.